Hello and welcome back to Cult Leader. I'm your cult leader, Spencer Henry, and today we're headed into the writer's room. No, not the cult leader writing room, because trust me, you don't want to go there. I'm talking about the TV writer's rooms. That's right, we're going Hollywood today, cult babes. Into the sacred creative spaces where your favorite television dramas are conceived. But what happens when the line between fiction and reality gets a little too blurry? When storytelling isn't just about crafting a compelling narrative, but about manipulating the truth itself. Well, that all leads us into introducing today's main character, Elisabeth Finch, often referred to as just Finch or Finchy. We're going to go with Finch for the remainder of today's episode. Now, Finch was born in 1980 and she grew up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, a middle class suburban neighborhood where the lawns are manicured and the biggest neighborhood scandal might involve a stolen garden gnome. She was born into a Jewish family and had a relatively normal upbringing. Relatively normal. Her mother, Joan Finch, was a dedicated special education teacher, the type who probably had a closet full of the world's best teacher mugs. Her father, Robert Finch, on the other hand, had a career that could best be described as unstable. What exactly he did isn't clear, but let's just say he wasn't making waves in the corporate world. Her older brother, Eric Finch, went the traditional make your parents proud route, becoming a doctor and settling down in Florida. Finch, however, had other plans. She pursued a more creative path, first attending Carnegie Mellon University, a breeding ground for future actors, writers, and the occasional eccentric tech genius. Her time there coincided with her mother's tragic battle with cancer. This was an emotional ordeal, and it turned Finch into an honorary medical expert. While most college kids were learning how to survive on ramen and cram for finals, Finch was becoming fluent in medical jargon, hospital bureaucracy, and the fine art of caregiving. After her time at Carnegie Mellon, she set her sights on Hollywood and enrolled in USC Film School with other aspiring screenwriters who dream of crafting the next big TV drama. The experience of film school not only expanded her love for storytelling, but also, it seems, her fascination with traumatic medical narratives. It was during this time she became deeply involved in the cancer community, we'll call it, advocating, researching, and by all accounts presenting herself as an authority. She even landed a gig assisting TV writer Rick Cleveland, who's best known for The West Wing and 6 Feet Under, who was working through his own family's battle with cancer. Finch, armed with her medical knowledge and willingness to dig into the grim details, helped him research his mother's stage 4 lung cancer. And then came her big writing debut. A deeply personal essay for the site Fresh Yarn, where she detailed taking the BRCA gene test, a screening for hereditary breast and ovarian cancer, and discovering that she was actually positive for the mutation. It was this very raw, dramatic piece, and it was tinged with what would later become her signature writing style, an almost cinematic retelling of personal trauma, like she was the main character in her own medical saga. Eventually, this writing style landed Finch her first television writing job as a junior writer on True Blood. Her dramatic storytelling didn't just stay on the page, either. Soon, her real life started to mirror the fictional tales when she came out publicly declaring she had been diagnosed with chondrosarcoma, a rare and usually fatal form of bone cancer. The kind of diagnosis that immediately raises eyebrows and sympathy levels. The kind of story that would make Hollywood executives lean forward in their chairs. Finch's cancer journey had drama, resilience, impossible odds, and of course, just the right amount of tragic beauty. Here was a woman who had done the impossible, right? She got her foot in showbiz, working on these major network shows, all whilst learning of a fatal diagnosis. I mean, it was shocking to friends and colleagues alike. The way Finch told it, the way she learned of this life-altering illness was just as theatrical as the rest of her life. Allegedly, she had gone in for a knee replacement surgery, which is an unusual procedure for someone her age, but it happened, so we'll go with it. And during the surgery, doctors apparently found something far more troubling. A tumor nestled in her spine. A discovery so dramatic it could have been a season finale twist, especially given her young age. Naturally, her doctors warned her that removing it was a high-risk procedure. Surgery could leave her paralyzed, and since she was too busy being a boss babe to even consider that possibility, she chose to start chemotherapy immediately instead. I mean, she was born in 1980, right? So She's like 34 when this is all going down. But chemo didn't stop her from climbing the career ladder. By this time, Finch was working on The Vampire Diaries, a show about sexy teen vampires and supernatural high school drama. And she kind of made it her whole personality. She positioned herself as this real life embodiment of the show's themes: resilient, unstoppable, and enduring the unthinkable. The show's hero. She painted a picture of herself as the ultimate fighter, from watching producers' cuts under a fog of Demerol to punching up dialogue about vampire werewolf hybrids while hooked up to IV drips. From the outside, she was a true force. Even bald, 17 pounds lighter, and relentlessly vomiting, nothing was going to keep her down. Nothing could stop her. And then came 2014, when Finch immortalized her story in a widely publicized Elle magazine article. If her tale wasn't compelling enough before, this article turned it into legend. She wrote about how she defied doctors' orders to quit working, how she stared death in the face and instead said, "No thanks, I've got deadlines." She described her grueling physical suffering, the kind that would make anyone else curl up into fetal position, but not Finch. No, she endured it all while critiquing edits of teenage vampire drama through a drug-induced haze. The article painted her as part warrior, part tragic heroine. She wasn't just surviving cancer, she was doing it without missing a single session in the writer's room of this highly successful television show. And you better believe, Hollywood ate it up. The Elle piece immediately earned her industry-wide sympathy and attention, catching the eye of Shondaland executives, the production company behind Grey's Anatomy, a show that thrives on stories like Finch's own personal life. Heart-wrenching, medically dramatic plot lines. Here was a writer who had literally lived a medical drama. Who better to infuse Grey's with real-life pain and authenticity than someone who had actually been through it all? And I'm actually so mad about this. So my friend Tina was at my birthday party this past weekend, and she was on Grey's Anatomy seasons 9 through 10. And I meant to ask her about this. So, I mean, we might have a follow-up, okay? Depending on whether she wants to spill the beans or not. On air, that is. Anyway, by 2014, Finch had parlayed her Elle article into something far more valuable than just sympathy. She had landed a dream job at Grey's Anatomy during their 11th season. Finch quickly established herself as the go-to writer for these emotionally devastating, trauma-heavy storylines that people seem to love. She was known for her ability to craft moments that left viewers sobbing into their wine glasses, and she quickly moved up the ranks, becoming both a writer and producer, which was a rare feat in Grey's writer's room that was notoriously competitive. But Finch wasn't just another talented TV writer. She was now an inspiration, a muse for the show. In 2016, she wrote her first Grey's episode featuring a teenage chondrosarcoma patient. This was the first of many moments where she'd seamlessly inject her suffering into the show, crafting fictionalized versions of her own tragic medical journey. Some assumed it was probably a difficult feat, others thought perhaps it was cathartic. But it wasn't until 2018 that she truly immortalized herself in the Grey's universe. When she wrote the episode, "Anybody Have a Map?" In this episode, Catherine Avery, played by Debbie Allen, one of the show's longest-running characters, is diagnosed with, you guessed it, chondrosarcoma. This was Finch's exact diagnosis, and it was basically her life story playing out on screen, except this time with an Emmy-winning actress delivering the monologues. The episode was critically acclaimed, hailed for its raw emotional depth. Finch's role as Grey's resident trauma expert now came with accolades. Inside the writer's room, no one questioned her expertise because Finch had crafted this whole image of being a woman barely hanging on to life. She wore headscarves to cover her hair loss, the assumed result of brutal chemotherapy as she had described it. She had a bandage on her chest covering her chemo port. Her complexion was always a little off, like you couldn't tell if she was sick or just bought the wrong CoverGirl shade. She frequently had to start missing work for clinical trials at the Mayo Clinic, which, given the show's grueling schedule, only added to the myth of her unbreakable work ethic. And for the people who weren't physically around her, she made sure they got the message through cryptic social media updates about her struggles, written in a way that was just vague enough to invite concerned replies and maximum sympathy. You know, posting a picture in the hospital gown like, don't ask what's going on right now. You don't even want to know. And speaking of, I probably sound like I'm lacking some serious empathy for Elisabeth Finch. And, well, cult babes, I am, because she is a con woman, a liar, and the only health concerns she was facing were mental. So let's get into it. The constant posting, the vague remarks she'd make, all of this wasn't for attention only. It came with perks. Finch's illness gave her a pass on things that would have otherwise been a career killer in a high-stress TV writer's room. She got the extra comfortable chair because who would deny a dying woman some lumbar support? Oh my God. She had the final say on all cancer-related storylines because who would dare question someone living through it? As I mentioned, she took extended time off, especially during deadlines, and no one could complain without looking like a fucking monster. Oftentimes, other writers would even finish the episodes that Finch had started and not even get credit, all in the name of helping someone. She was quite literally untouchable in so many ways, and it wasn't just about her professional life, okay? She worked her way in with high-profile industry figures, people like Shonda Rhimes, the god that is Shonda Rhimes, Grey's head writer and showrunner Krista Vernoff, and even actress Anna Paquin. Yes, True Blood's Suki Stackhouse became part of her inner circle. Debbie Allen even drove her to work. I mean, there was an endless supply of drama here. During the Kavanaugh hearings and Roe v. Wade discourse of 2018, Finch inserted herself into the narrative by appearing in a PSA-style video arguing that access to abortion actually saved her life and should remain protected. She claimed she got pregnant while she was undergoing chemotherapy and then faced the heart-wrenching decision of having an abortion or dying. She said she received a kidney transplant and implied it was from Anna Paquin. She even claimed once that a close friend was murdered in the 2018 Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh and that she personally helped clean up their remains. I mean, this woman had a story for everything. A narcissistic, compulsive liar. At this point, though her life story seemed almost unbelievable, still no one was questioning her because she had built this persona that was so impenetrable, so steeped in personal tragedy that challenging her would have seemed not only cruel but inappropriate. I mean, imagine second guessing someone that was in her position, that painted their life the way she painted it. It was not worth the risk. Well, soon Finch took things a step further in the writer's room. She wasn't just drawing from her own so-called experiences anymore. She was lifting deeply personal traumas from the people around her and presenting them as her own. When a fellow writer confided that they had been conceived through rape, Finch quietly absorbed the story and then repackaged it as a character arc for Joe Wilson, pitching it as if it came from a close friend. The result was one of the most harrowing plot lines in Grey's history. Joe discovering she was the product of sexual violence, spiraling into a mental health crisis, and eventually checking herself into a treatment facility. Grey's fans, you probably remember this. The episode Silent All These Years was widely praised for its sensitive portrayal of trauma and even won a Sentinel Award. Finch, of course, took full credit, giving interviews about the importance of telling such stories with care, never mentioning that the original trauma wasn't hers to tell. In early 2018, right before the Joe Wilson storyline aired, Finch claimed all the experiences she had been through had been too much. The cancer treatments, the abortion, the kidney transplant, the cleanup after a massacre. It was too much for her. It was too much for anyone. She needed some time off work to get treatment for her PTSD. So she checked herself into a mental health facility in Arizona using the fake name Joe, claiming she wanted to remain anonymous. And this is where it gets even wilder, because it's here that she met a woman named Jennifer Beyer, a Kansas nurse and mother of 5 who had just barely escaped a nightmare marriage. Her ex-husband had been a master manipulator, gaslighter, abuser, and she was now trying to reclaim her life, the perfect prey for someone like Finch. Finch, ever the storyteller, saw her opening. Jennifer had real trauma? Well, Finch could have trauma too. She subtly began mirroring Jennifer's life, pulling single white female levels of emotional damage. Jennifer's ex-husband had been a cruel, controlling abuser. Finch suddenly remembered that, oh my God, my brother Eric, he abused me the same way your husband abused you. Jennifer had PTSD with panic attacks, dissociative episodes, and trouble sleeping. Finch, wouldn't you know it, also had those exact symptoms. When Jennifer received a phone call informing her that her ex-husband had died by suicide, Finch immediately inserted herself into the tragedy, acting as Jennifer's protector and support system. She flew back with her to Kansas, helping her navigate the grief. And 2 weeks later, Finch sent an email to her Grey's Anatomy coworkers, claiming that her own brother, Eric, had just died by suicide. In the email to Gray's staff, Finch wrote, "I've been absent and coming back tomorrow. I just don't know who's looped into what, and I'd rather put it out there so no one is in the dark or feeling eggshelly. I've gone because my brother died by suicide. He was on life support for a short while, but ultimately did not survive. I say this not because I need or want anything from anyone. I'm not a delicate flower or whatever. I just want people to know I'm still here, still part of the team." She added that because Eric was a doctor, he knew exactly how to shoot himself without dying instantly, forcing her to be the one to pull the plug, claiming his failed attempt was a way to torment her one last time. The trauma. Jennifer naturally saw Finch at first as a kindred spirit, someone who understood her struggles. And since Finch was this successful Hollywood writer, she seemed like a stable, safe person to be around. The exact opposite of the chaos Jennifer had just fled. Finch had Grey's Anatomy money, baby. She had industry friends. She had security. She presented herself as a savior, a strong, protective presence who could help Jennifer rebuild her life. So, when Finch left the treatment center in July of 2019, she invited Jennifer to come stay with her in California. Once Jennifer moved in, the relationship took a turn from supportive friend to an intense, all-consuming lesbian romance. Finch made herself the protector, the one who could keep Jennifer and her kids safe from the horrors of the past. She created a world where she was the only one they could trust. By Thanksgiving of 2019, just 4 months after leaving treatment, Elisabeth Finch proposed. It was whirlwind fast, but Finch had a way of making things sound urgent and necessary. She wasn't just offering Jennifer romance, she was offering her a future, stability, protection, all the things Jennifer so desperately needed after escaping her abusive ex-husband. It's easy to see why she would say yes to this. So Jennifer, still fragile, still trying to believe in the possibility of a safe and happy life, kind of agreed. Really, she was manipulated into doing so. And just like that, a beachside wedding in Palos Verdes, California made them officially wife and wife. With the wedding rings still fresh on their fingers, Finch did what she always did best. She started writing the script, baby. She fully embedded herself into Jennifer's family, claiming her kids as her own, posting them all over social media, referring to herself as Joe Mama, a clear nod to Joe Wilson. She made it clear to Jennifer she wanted to legally adopt them. And at first, all Jennifer wanted to do was to believe Finch. After all, this was the woman who had swooped in like a Hollywood movie savior, offering her love, protection, and a whole new life. But after several months of living together, things weren't quite adding up. For someone who allegedly had a laundry list of terminal medical conditions, Finch didn't seem to have a single scar from any of her supposed surgeries. She claimed she had a chemo port, but Jennifer, who, let's not forget, is a nurse, noticed there was no surgical mark, no catheter site, nothing. It was a glaring inconsistency for someone who had supposedly been battling cancer for years. So, then came the Facebook deep dive. A classic move when something isn't sitting right. Jennifer scrolled through Finch's past posts, expecting to find the kind of heartbreaking hospital bed selfies that someone going through years of chemotherapy might have. Instead, she found pictures of Finch looking suspiciously healthy, with a full set of eyebrows and eyelashes, even during times she claimed she was deep in treatment. Any oncology nurse, or anyone who's even casually watched Grey's Anatomy for that matter, knows that chemo doesn't just make your hair fall out, it can take your brows and lashes and sometimes even body hair. But there was Finch rocking her full set of brows while supposedly enduring grueling chemotherapy for a rare and aggressive form of cancer. Now, that's not to say this can't be the case, but it just seemed off to her. And then there was what we call the Emmy debacle. Before taking his own life, Jennifer's ex-husband completely trashed their home, leaving it in ruins as one final act of control. The house was unlivable, damaged walls, overturned furniture, shattered belongings, a horrific situation. Jennifer's support network of friends and community members stepped in to help her clean up and restore the home to livable conditions. Finch, ever the grand martyrer, made a big show of saying she was skipping the Emmy Awards to be there for Jennifer during this difficult time. She swooped in, threw on some work gloves, and acted like she was leading the charge. A savior, the only one truly sacrificing for Jennifer's well-being. She even filmed parts of the cleanup, making it look like she was on some kind of heroic rescue mission rather than just helping her girlfriend move back into her house. But there was one tiny problem with this murderer notion. The Emmys had already aired 2 months earlier. There was nothing to skip. There was no event, no red carpet invitation, no dramatic trade-off between career and love. What do I do? I'm giving it all away to help this woman. Just an easily verifiable, embarrassingly lazy lie. And that was the moment when the house of cards that is Elisabeth Finch started swaying violently. Because if Finch was lying about skipping a major award show for a selfless act, what else had she lied about? Turns out a lot. Jennifer finally confronted Finch one day, and in a move that can only be described as damage control, Finch partially admitted she had lied about having cancer. But only partially. Finch claimed she had been sick once, but she had exaggerated certain details. What? Jennifer was not buying it. She's like, I'm not fucking getting duped again. She'd been manipulated before. She knew what gaslighting looked like, and she wasn't about to let Finch rewrite the script of reality again. So, in March of 2022, Jennifer did what Finch never expected. She went straight to the top. She contacted Shondaland executives, Disney HR, all of them, telling them that Finch, one of their top writers, was a fraud. And it didn't take long for investigators to blow Finch's whole con wide open. Eric Finch, her brother that supposedly killed himself, alive and well, working as a doctor in Florida. No record of a tragic, vengeful suicide. There was no plug being pulled. The Mayo Clinic? Never heard of her. No record of Finch ever being registered as a patient. So much for all those clinical trials she had skipped work to attend. Oh, and even worse, the Tree of Life synagogue massacre. The massacre tragically happened, of course, but Finch's so-called friend, who was allegedly murdered, didn't exist. And her heroic story about cleaning up her friend's remains? Pure fiction. These lies were bad. By March 31st of 2022, the news had leaked. The Hollywood Reporter dropped a bombshell article announcing that Finch had taken a leave of absence from Grey's Anatomy. So, a pretty much polite way of saying she was being pushed out the door before the full fallout hit. By the following month, April of 2022, the Elisabeth Finch scandal detonated across Hollywood like a chain reaction. The press was ripping her whole story apart scene by scene. Vanity Fair and The Ankler, two publications known for pulling zero punches, dropped scorching exposés that laid out every single fabrication in brutal detail. She wasn't writing herself out of this one. Up until this point, Finch had lived her life like a well-produced drama, carefully crafting her image as a heroic, trauma-surviving genius writer. But the final act had arrived and the audience was done suspending disbelief. Hollywood turned their back on her instantly. She was effectively blacklisted. Disney and ABC refused to renew her contract. And for a show like Grey's Anatomy, which thrives on scandal, on screen, not off, keeping Finch around would have been PR suicide. No one in the industry would touch her. Studios, execs, and fellow writers all went radio silent because hiring the most infamous liar in television was a liability that no one wanted, no matter how good her storytelling was. And it was good. Shondaland, the company that had once embraced her with open arms after her Elle story came out, erased her. No public support, no goodbye party, just poof, gone. Overnight, Finch went from being an influential Hollywood writer to an industry-wide pariah. By October of 2024, Hollywood had mostly moved on from Elisabeth Finch. But then, Peacock dropped the 3-part docuseries, Anatomy of Lies, and suddenly, the wildest scammer in recent TV history was back in the spotlight. The documentary didn't just rehash the scandal, it went deeper, breaking down every manipulation in detail from how Finch built her empire on a foundation of fabrications, to using medical trauma, emotional abuse, and straight-up stolen tragedy to carve out a career. Naturally, Finch couldn't let the doc air without making a grand statement, so like any disgraced public figure in the digital age, she hopped on Instagram and posted a lengthy public apology. It started with a line that accidentally told the truth for once. I've given no one any reason to believe a word I say. Yeah, girl, we know. She acknowledged that she lied, but she provided little explanation for why she spent a decade conning Hollywood and emotionally wrecking real people. No deep reflection. No, I was struggling with my own mental health issues spin, just a vague, blanket admission of guilt that, not shockingly, failed to win over the public. And if she thought for a second that a performative Instagram post was going to be enough to wipe away years of calculated deception, emotional manipulation, and career-ending fraud, she was sorely mistaken. This wasn't some PR crisis that could be smoothed over with a Notes app apology and a few vague promises of growth. Jennifer, who had actually survived real trauma, instead of borrowing it, wasn't about to let Finch spin a redemption arc either. Shortly after Finch's weak public Instagram apology, Jennifer responded, publicly as well. And she didn't hold back. Her statement claimed that Finch was still exploiting her children, and that Finch had shown zero real remorse and was still a manipulative, dangerous person. Jennifer wasn't just angry. She was making sure the world knew that Finch was still a threat, a predator. Because while Finch might have lost her Hollywood career, manipulators like her don't just stop, they pivot, they rebrand, they find new victims. And Jennifer was determined to make sure nobody else fell for it. And here's where things really went off the rails. With the entire TV industry watching in horror, Finch, whose entire career was based on a massive lie, decided that this was about the perfect time to pitch a TV series about her life. That's right. She tried to sell Hollywood on a fictionalized version of her own real-life con. Reports surfaced that Finch was shopping around scripts based on her experiences, positioning herself as the flawed anti-hero of her own story. It was so audacious that even Hollywood was like, absolutely not. Finch had spent her entire career lying her way into writers' rooms, and now she was trying to cash in on being caught. Listen, I always say the best way to get over public humiliation is to monetize it, baby. Can't knock that part of the hustle, okay? We love it. But anyway, her attempted comeback, dead on arrival, baby. By the end of 2024, Elisabeth Finch had officially written herself out of Hollywood for good. It turns out that faking cancer, lying about it, lying about a shooting, emotionally manipulating a domestic abuse survivor, and fabricating a whole dead brother doesn't exactly scream, give this woman another shot. But if you thought Elisabeth Finch would quietly fade into obscurity after her elaborate web of lies was exposed, think again, because old habits die hard. Finch tried to latch onto a new cause, the Los Angeles wildfire relief efforts. Yes, this year, in early January 2025, as devastating wildfires swept through Los Angeles, Finch took to her private Facebook page to solicit donations. She urged her followers to send money directly to her personal Venmo account, claiming she was on the ground, assisting those affected. In her post, Finch wrote, "This is just me, boots on the ground. It was challenging enough getting dog food while evacuated, and I was at a safe place, so this is for the people who have virtually nothing and have pets with basic needs." She justified the direct-to-Venmo approach by stating it would avoid GoFundMe fees, positioning herself as a hands-on coordinator of relief efforts. People were not going to let this slide. Jamie Denbo, a writer and co-executive producer for Grey's Anatomy, didn't mince words. She reposted Finch's solicitation and warned, "This person is a scammer and a liar. It is well documented in the Peacock series Anatomy of Lies. Unless you want to send her donations of 69 cents for her cancer treatment, she doesn't have cancer, or perhaps in memory of her late brother, he's alive, or anything else she has lied about, everything, do not donate to Elisabeth Finch." In response to the backlash, Finch defended her intentions, telling the Hollywood Reporter, "I recognize, given my history, people might be skeptical of my fundraising efforts. I'm trying to make amends in as many ways as I can, including helping my community, especially during these difficult times. So many organizations are calling for gift cards because they're overwhelmed with physical donations, and I don't want people's pets' needs to get lost in the shuffle." Yeah, we're not buying it, babe. So, what's next for her? What's next for Elisabeth Finch? A new fake illness? Unlikely. She played that card for years. A self-published memoir full of reflections on her mistakes? Meh, possibly in the works. I mean, Hollywood loves a good comeback story, but only when the person actually owns up to what they did. Not when they keep trying to scam their way into the next chapter. Well, at least most of the time. And that's my thing too. Did she need to go to all these extremes? At a certain point, it's like, girl, you're at the top. Stop lying. It's called fake it till you make it, but she took it a step further. So, I don't know if that's the last we've heard of Elisabeth Finch, but I would bet money that we haven't heard the last of her. That's where we're going to leave it for the week. I will see you next time. And until next time, if you're out there faking cancer, you better get ready to provide some answers because people are going to have questions and you're a piece of shit. Okay, goodbye.